The maid was very furious. She asked Ayla why she missed dinner and didn't tell her anything. The Duke was angry with her. She said the girl was exhausted, and also ordered her to stop acting like that, and she needs to start acting like her old self. The girl was simply amazed that the author had taken such a turn. She was offended for the heroine. Even the maids looked down on her. She did not realize how hard it was for the heroine to live, and she decided that she had to change some things. The girl decided that the heroine had had enough of the mocking and rude behavior of the maids towards her. The girl stood up, straightened her back, and asked her what her name was. A little taken aback, the maid said her name was Jane, and asked with bewilderment in her voice what Ailey was waiting for, she should apologize. Ailey was shocked and furious at her words. She felt sorry for the poor heroine, as even the servants looked at her with contempt and condescension. She threw the vase of flowers in fury. Ailey looked at the maid with contempt, saying that the vase had accidentally fallen, and asked her if she should apologize now for her behavior. She asked if the maid had hurt herself. She knew she had to use the full power of this situation to show her superiority. The girl didn't know what the real Ailey would do, but she knew she had to do everything she could to make sure something like this didn't happen. The girl said that the maid should be punished for her words and should remove the splinters. The girl was furious and said that the maid was fired because it was not profitable for her to keep such a worthless servant around. The maid couldn't stand the pressure from her mistress and left the room in a hurry. The girl knew she needed to raise her profile and frantically wanted the rumors to spread quickly. Ailey knew that the sooner the bad reputation about her spread, the sooner she would divorce her husband. The girl planned a cunning plan. She wanted to get rid of her obligations and have fun to the fullest. 3 days later, the maids were gossiping about her. They said that the girl began to behave very strangely and did not understand why the Duke had married her. The maids were puzzled how she could do nothing and just rest. They said that she was acting like a lady of the house, but she was not, since she and the Duke were not on good terms. Ailey called for the maid. The maid quickly came to the lady. Ailey said she had not seen her before. The maid was surprised and said that she had recently taken over her duties, since the former maid had been fired and she had been hired in her place. The maid said her name was Liana. Ailey said with a smile on her face that she wouldn't be here long and that she needed to take good care of her. Liana was taken aback by her mistress's words. She said she would never disobey Ailey's orders and would serve her faithfully. She wanted to work with her for a long time and waited for her orders, Ailey said with a smile, telling her to tell the maid to bring her some snacks and a catalog. Ailey wanted to do some shopping for herself again. Liana was surprised that she wanted snacks again. She said that the mistress could eat whatever she wanted. Ailey knew she couldn't be a villain without luxury. She ate whatever she wanted and thought it was happiness. After the meal, she made the decision that for now she would go to her husband and talk to him. A maid came to her and told her that the Duke was waiting for her and he wanted to talk to her. Ailey was taken aback. She realized that she had been caught, but she didn't intend to just give up. She walked with the maid and hoped he would give her consent to the divorce. The closer they got, the more Ailey wondered why the Duke had called her. She wondered if he wanted her to account for her waste and send her away. She walked on, regardless of what awaited her. She walked toward him with a brisk stride. The maid shouted at her to wait and not to go alone. Ailey said it was fine, and she would go alone, so they could meet later. Ailey went in and quickly asked her husband why he was looking for her and why she needed her. Ailey hoped she would say she would divorce her, but unfortunately, he asked if she was ready for the banquet. Ailey asked in confusion what banquet we were talking about. The Duke said that the banquet would be organized by the first prince in 10 days. The heroine recalled the actions that took place in the real story. There was a banquet in honor of the prince's birthday, and 6 months later, Claude mutinied. Ailey said that everyone around him was complaining about her profligacy and asked him if he had heard about it. The Duke was confused. She said she was carelessly spending his money on various jewelry. The Duke was a bit taken aback and said that it was not wasteful at all, and if she wanted something, she could just write a list and he would buy it for her. The girl was shocked at his words. She thought he would be furious that she was wasting money because she had spent a lot. Ailey decided to tell him that she was not fulfilling her duties, but he calmly told her that if she didn't want to do it, she didn't have to. He wasn't forcing her. The Duke said that in return for her whims, he wanted her to stop talking nonsense about divorce. Ailey couldn't say a word. After their conversation, she wondered what she should do next. She had no choice. She had to escape to stay alive. But she knew that there was no way she could tell Claude about it. Ailey sat very saddened. She kept wondering why her husband didn't want a divorce. She knew that he wouldn't even come into her bedroom. Ailey didn't sit in sad reflection for long. She was determined to escape. She wanted to sell her jewelry and expensive clothes to cover her travel expenses. Ailey decided to act more decisively. She decided to see what her escape would look like. She made a rope out of a sheet, tied it on the balcony, and climbed down. She knew that at a time like this, the guards would change, and she would be able to realize what she had planned. But unfortunately for her, the plan went awry. As her rope failed and broke, she was quickly falling to the bottom. Ailey was very scared, and she closed her eyes. She felt so bad that she couldn't even feel the pain. Claude caught her. She was very surprised. The girl hadn't expected this. Ailey asked how long he had been here. He looked at her and calmly said, since she opened the curtain. The girl was relieved that he had caught her from such a great height. She only managed to ask him why he hadn't said anything to her then, since he had seen what she was doing. Claude said he was afraid she would fall if he said anything. The girl timidly said she didn't fall, just her clothes ripped. She told him she was fine and he could let her go. Claude said he wouldn't let her go until he was sure she was okay. He asked what she was even trying to do. The girl knew that if she told the truth, she would be in big trouble. Ailey said she just wanted to go for a walk. She knew he wouldn't believe it, so she thought of telling the truth. After gathering her courage, she said that she wanted to run away because she didn't want to be in a place like this anymore. He looked at her in surprise and asked if she hated him so much that she wanted to run away. The girl was surprised. She didn't expect to see him like that. He always hid his emotions. Claude looked at her and said that she might have hurt herself that way. Ailey said she just wanted to leave. She was worried about her life. The young man said he would take her to the bedroom. Leaving her in her room, he told her to rest. Ailey said they weren't done talking and thanked him for paying off her father's debt. Contrary to the fact that their marriage of convenience, and even though he had cheated on her, she was grateful to him. He was surprised when she said he hadn't been faithful to her, but she said she knew everything. He avoided her all the time and favored the war over his wife. Ailey knew he didn't like her. He was a little puzzled. Ailey decided to keep her ground and continue. The girl said that they didn't sleep in the same bedroom and that they had talked very little since the wedding. And when she mentioned divorce, he didn't even look at her. He was sure it was some kind of misunderstanding. She was driving him crazy. Ailey wanted to end the conversation and get away from him. She frantically wished for a divorce. He asked her to give him another chance. Claude asked her if he would love her, and they would have love, then she would change her mind about divorce. Ailey was puzzled. She didn't understand why he was talking about love. Ailey thought it was a good chance and should be taken. The girl told her husband that if he made her fall in love with him, they would not divorce. She knew that if she took the right chance, she could divorce him. She told him she had one condition. Ailey said he had 1 month to do everything. She knew that it was impossible to do such a thing in that time, and thus he would lose his chance. Ailey said that if her heart remained unchanged by the end of the month, he would give her a divorce. The girl knew that if there had been more time, she still wouldn't have fallen in love with Claude. Sticking out between life and Claude, she would choose life. He agreed. The girl reminded him that he only had 1 month. He left, and the young lady was left alone. She knew there was only 6 months left before the rebellion, so that month she could spend. Knowing she wouldn't fall in love, at least she would live in luxury. Ailey heard a noise outside the window, early in the morning. She knew no one was expected. She thought it might be someone influential. Ailey was visited by a maid. Ailey asked the maid what had happened, since she noticed that quite a few carriages had arrived. The maid was very happy and excited. She said that the carriages had brought gifts for her. Ailey was surprised. The maid asked her to go quickly and see what had arrived. She frantically wanted to go and start working on her mistress's new image. Ailey asked the girl what kind of gifts there were, since there were so many carriages. The girl said that there were a lot of jewelry and beautiful dresses, and that there were even diamonds of Princess Shay herself. Ailey was puzzled and asked the maid what kind of diamond it was. The maid said it was the most expensive diamond in the empire. It belonged to Princess Shay's kingdom, which was defeated 100 years ago. The maid was collecting Ailey. Ailey, in turn, was thinking about the Duke. about his intention to buy her love. Ailey laughed frantically because of this situation. The maid showed the diamond to Ailey. She looked at it and realized why everyone thought it was so expensive. Ailey told the maid that she wanted to meet her husband. The girl was sure that the mistress wanted to thank the Duke, but she replied that she wanted to return the gift, as it did not suit her. The maid was shocked. Ailey didn't just walk in on her husband, she stormed in like a tornado. She was angry with him because of his behavior. The Duke was confused. He timidly asked her about the gifts. The girl said that such behavior was not fair to her. He misunderstood her a little bit. He said if she didn't like the gifts, they could return them and buy something else. Something she'd like. Because he didn't want to upset her. She was angry with him. He wanted to buy her love with money. Ailey told him that he wouldn't get his way that way, because money can't buy love. Taking his eyes off the girl, he said he wanted to show her his sincere feelings for her this way. She screamed that she didn't need to show her feelings this way. But deep down, she wanted to accept him. He was very handsome. But she wouldn't let herself. The Duke said he would throw it away then. He had already swung around and was about to throw it away when suddenly Ailey shouted and told him not to throw it away, she would accept it. He told her he would never dare buy her heart with money. He thought she would like the gift. Ailey thought she shouldn't have pissed him off like that. The girl said she would keep the stone safe and walked slowly to the door. On the way out, he asked Ailey what kind of gifts she liked. After a little thought, the young lady said that such gifts in which much more feelings. Ailey left, and the Duke was left alone. He thought she liked everything, but he was wrong. Duke Reinhardt was incredibly wealthy, and his influence surpassed that of the imperial family. But he knew that all the gold in the world, including his, had not helped him at 15 when his mother died of poisoning. He was devastated and could do nothing to bring her back. He was not helped by the influence at the age of 16 when his father was murdered before his eyes. After the death of his family man, he searched for the killer for a long time, but all attempts failed, and he couldn't find any information. After such moments, his goals changed forever. He didn't want to lose the people he loved and preferred not to love at all than to cause himself unbearable heartache again. He decided to marry of convenience and thought that as long as he was generous, his wife would be with him. But unfortunately, she wanted to leave, and he didn't understand why. He knew what frightened her. Even on their wedding day, she was scared and was even afraid to take his hand. He wanted to come to her the first night, but he was afraid of messing it up. The servant said it would be all right, and that it would be all right if he came later. He left, telling her to rest. They never spoke again after that. Duke noticed that she had become a different person. He didn't want to lose anything or anyone in his life. He blamed himself for everything, but was glad that he knew everything and could fix everything. He thought that a month would be enough time for him to fix everything, and then she would stay with him. A butler came to see the Duke. He brought him tea and food. The Duke asked Henry if he had seen anyone who didn't like jewelry and other luxurious gifts. Then he asked what kind of gift he thought would show his feelings. Henry wondered with a smile on his face if it had anything to do with Ailey. The butler said the lady wanted the Duke's heart, not all the gifts. The Duke said he had given her his heart always, but in his own way. The butler pointed out that they unfortunately hardly spent any time together. The Duke thought about the butler's words and said he would stop by to see his wife today. The butler was a little puzzled and asked if he should come back tomorrow, but the Duke was persistent and said today. The maid hurried into the lady's room and said that she should pack quickly or the Duke would come to see her. The maid thought that the Duke intended to spend the first night with his wife. Ailey was in a state of shock. She knew he was interested in war, but she didn't think he was a pervert. Ailey pictured the picture in her mind of him coming on to her. She decided not to let that happen and fight him back. She didn't want that fate. Duke came to see her. He wanted to spend time with her, despite his many jobs. Ailey said that since he came, he must be very hungry. He said he was hungry since work takes up a lot of his time. He touched her and said that today he will give everything only to her. She was furious at his words, and she hit him with all her might. He didn't even move. She was in a lot of pain. He didn't understand why she was so angry. He left everything for her. Ailey said she had a right to be angry because he wanted to spend the first night with her, regardless of her feelings. He was thunderstruck. The Duke said there was a total misunderstanding. He just wanted to show her his feelings and how much he cared for her. Ailey didn't understand why he came to her so late then. He changed in front of her and said he just wanted to be with her. He wanted to go away and leave her. Ailey felt a little uneasy and said she wanted to go for a walk so he could keep her company. The Duke suggested that she go to the garden, and the young lady agreed. When she saw the place, she was very surprised as she had not seen it before. She liked it very much. Looking at her husband, Ailey asked if he was all right, because he looked strange somehow. The Duke said he was fine. Ailey said that the garden was very beautiful. The Duke said quietly that his mother had created this place. The girl knew what had happened to his parents, and she understood that it was not an easy time for him. Ailey apologized for disturbing his memories. He said it was okay, and that it was all in the past. The young lady asked if he often came to the garden. Claude said he didn't like flowers, and only came when he thought of his mother. Ailey plucked a flower and gave it to her husband. She asked him to accept it, and told him that when you see something beautiful, it makes you feel better. He accepted and said she was right. Claude asked if she liked the flowers. Ailey said that she likes them very much as they are beautiful. He picked a flower. Claude gave her a flower, gently placing it in her palm, saying that it suited her very well. The girl blushed a little at his words. Claude asked her to memorize that moment. He asked her to wait, and with all tenderness, he came over and caught the flower in her hair. She thought he wanted to kiss her. Ailey realized that such walks could influence her decisions, and said they had better go inside. After the walk, Ailey called the maid to bring her something to eat. Liana looked at her for a long time and said she looked very pretty. Eileen sent the maid away. She kept thinking about the Duke. She had enjoyed their walk, and it was all romantic even. But she knew she couldn't afford to fall in love. She knew she should hold out for a month, and they wouldn't see each other again. Ailey had been thinking about her husband all night. She genuinely didn't understand why he wasn't behaving the same way as the narrative. Ailey knew that if the narrative was disrupted, her life was at risk. Standing outside his office, she knew she had to find out as much as she could about him. Her thoughts drifted away when the butler opened the door. He was surprised and asked what she was doing outside the study. Ailey said she was just taking a walk. The butler said he had worked in the house for a long time and respected the lady, so she could call him Henry. She asked if the Duke was working. He said the Duke was resting, and she need not disturb him. Ailey decided to take the opportunity to go in. She saw him. Shyly, she said she was walking and got a little lost. Claude closed the door and said he was free and she could come in. Claude looked at her fondly and said she was looking for him. Ailey was taken aback and said that she had come by accident and she had better leave. But the Duke suggested that she stay. Ailey said that since he's working, she doesn't want to bother him. Claude said she couldn't bother him. Ailey agreed to have a cup of tea. He made her some tea. Ailey was puzzled. He was completely different in the book, and she hadn't expected such kindness to her. She said she was very pleased to drink tea made by her husband. Claude looked at his wife and said that she had changed a lot. She used to be afraid to look at him. The young gentleman asked if she was the real one before or the one now. The girl knew that he and the heroine were two different people, so she asked her husband that he didn't like the way she was now. Claude said that he liked everything on the contrary, and even wished it had been like this before. Ailey said that a whole year had passed, and that was why she had changed so much, especially in such a difficult environment. The Duke looked at her in bewilderment. Ailey said that the servants looked down on her and did not accept her as a mistress in the house, and that had led to this change. The Duke was furious at what she said. He couldn't believe that she had been treated like this all this time. He asked if that was why she had fired the maid. Ailey confirmed his hunch, as she didn't want to hide the obvious fact. Ailey said that the new maid is very good and does her job well, and treats her with respect. Claude was angry. He wanted to punish everyone for their inappropriate behavior towards his wife. The Duke summoned the butler and told him to fire everyone, leaving a minimum of servants. And he found those who disrespected the mistress. Claude said, "If the butler finds the newcomers, then let him personally teach them himself." The maid came to Ailey and told her to get ready for the prince's birthday ball. Ailey didn't want anything and told the maid to pick everything out herself. Ailey didn't really want to go to the ball. After all, she knew what and who would do to her. Remembering the story from the books, she didn't understand why everyone made such a mockery of the heroine. She knew there would be a lot of people there who always looked down on her, and she decided that it wouldn't happen again. and she would show everyone who she was. Ailey walked and thought about the ball and the prince himself. She knew from the novel that he was sociable and kind. She was curious to meet him in person. As she entered the room, she saw that there were flowers everywhere. She was amazed at the beauty and was puzzled how they had not wilted. She touched and saw golden sand, and realized it was a sign of magic. She knew it was very costly and didn't understand what her husband was thinking. Claude came to see her. She was surprised. He had never visited her before. He brought her a bouquet of flowers and asked her if she liked the gift. She said she did, but one bouquet would have been enough. Claude said he wouldn't give his wife one bouquet. Ailey said it was enough for her to go to the garden. And this gift is overkill. Claude said it wasn't over the top, and it was nothing to him. After standing for a while, he wished her good night and left. The girl was alone with her thoughts. She frantically didn't understand why he wasn't behaving the same way as in the narrative. The days flew by quickly, and it was time for the ball. Ailey was very beautiful in her outfit. Ailey said she liked everything and thanked the maids for their work. They were confused and said it was their job, while giving her a lot of compliments. The girl was puzzled by this behavior. Ailey sent everyone away, and only her maid remained. She asked the girl what had happened, why the maid's attitude towards her had changed so drastically. She was pleased, of course, but something was bothering her. The maid told Ailey that the master had fired everyone who ignored or disrespected Ailey, and now they were hiring new ones. Ailey was shocked, and now realized why there had been such turmoil in the house. Ailey thanked Liana for telling her everything. The maid was glad she could help. The girl said she had to go because the time was getting close. The maid wished Ailey good luck and a good evening. She came out and saw her husband. He gave her his hand and said he would accompany her. He was fascinated by her. Claude asked why she was looking at him like that. Ailey said that the outfit suited him very well. He looked at her and said affectionately that she was gorgeous. His words made her forget everything inside. The girl said she heard he fired the servants. Claude said they didn't know their place. Ailey said he shouldn't have gone that far, but he was sure no one dared treat his wife that way, and he promised that he would deal with anyone who hurt her. A carriage came to pick them up. They moved on their way. Ailey asked her husband what the prince was like. She was interested in him since he was the main character in the book. He was surprised at such a question and didn't understand why she was interested. Ailey said that they were going to his birthday party and that she was interested. Claude gave her a hard look and said he didn't like it when his wife asked about another guy while he was around her. The Duke said that the prince was not a very pleasant person. Ailey wanted more information, but the girl knew he was against the imperial family, and so she understood why he didn't want to talk to her about such a topic. The Duke asked if she had ever met him. The girl said she'd seen him a couple times. Nothing else. He looked at her and said that when she met him, she would figure it out for herself. As he got out of the carriage, the Duke gave his hand to his wife. She did not want to fall, so she accepted his help. But still, she stumbled unintentionally. Fortunately, her husband was beside her. The Duke caught her. His face was so close and it embarrassed her. She timidly thanked him for picking her up and hurried to another position. Claude asked her to be a little more careful as she might hurt herself. Ailey said that they were running late and they should hurry to the reception. He followed her. They entered the hall. Their married couple was introduced to all the guests, but immediately everyone started whispering behind their backs. Ailey told herself that she would just ignore those who treated her badly, and she would not pay attention so as not to spoil her mood. They were followed by the prince. He was introduced in all his glory. Ailey saw him and was a little taken aback. The short story described him a little differently. He had a stick temper and was always teasing Claude. The prince sat tired, leaning on the back of his chair, while his father, the young emperor, was making a toast. He asked the prince to say a few words. The prince was a bit out of breath and made a joke that wasn't funny and drank the bottle down his throat. He said with a smile that he hoped all the guests enjoyed the drinks and food. Ailey was shocked, the beginning. The banquet was not described much in the novella, but it was not described at all. She didn't understand how he could drink at his banquet. After all, he was the main character and didn't allow himself such liberties. The Duke looked at her reaction and asked if she now believed his words. Claude stood there pondering. He didn't like such events, since he knew that most of the guests wanted to get their hands on him. Ailey asked him if he wanted to talk to someone. They looked at each other. Claude was glad of that. If he knew she wasn't afraid of him, he would have come to her sooner. Claude said he didn't want to talk to others and would rather lose weight with her. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of the emperor. They greeted each other courteously. Ailey knew that her husband was an authority to everyone. The emperor wanted to speak to the duke alone, but he refused. Ailey heard and said that she would be fine, so he could boldly go. Ailey stood there, immersed in her thoughts. Her peace was disturbed by one of the ladies, who was eager to insult Ailey. Ailey decided not to take offense. She decided to fight back once and for all. The girl was shocked by Ailey's behavior and ran to her husband in tears. He started yelling at her that since she hadn't had her first night with the Duke, there was no need to be angry at the ladies who came with pure intentions to support her. He wanted to hurt her and was not ashamed of his anger. They pissed Ailey off. She was angry that they were discussing such a thing in public. It was her private life, he had no right to do that. Ailey threatened him and told him that if they didn't apologize, she would tell the Duke. He started to apologize, but then he wanted to say something. But Ailey interrupted him and poured a glass on him. She decided to teach him a lesson for his shameful words to her. He started yelling at her, and everyone started watching their scuffle. Ailey decided to come out the winner and told everyone that he yelled at her and talked about her first night, which is unacceptable of him. Her antics attracted and amused the prince. He said he had fun, and that thanks to her, he had a good laugh. All the gentlemen opened their mouths at what was happening. The prince took a bottle of wine and poured the contents over the man's head, saying that he had behaved very wrongly towards the Duchess. He said he couldn't let it go. Ailey did not understand why he took her side, for he had never paid any attention to her in the novella. He was interested in another persona. The prince began a conversation with Ailey. She was surprised that he knew her. He said she was a lot of fun. He saw the Duke and his father and decided to leave. But lastly, he touched her and gently said, "See you later." Ailey was a little taken aback by the prince's behavior. The Duke and His Majesty stood on the highway. The Duke's thoughts were on his wife. He was worried that no one would harm her. He knew he had to be with her. The emperor distracted him from his thoughts and began to ask questions of a provocative nature. At the moment, the empire is divided into two camps, one of aristocrats and the other of imperialists. The emperor frantically wanted Claude on his side. The Duke was neutral, but each wanted to win him over to their side. The emperor told him he'd done a lot for the empire. He wanted him to continue to serve. Their conversation was interrupted by a servant. He said that an unpleasant situation had occurred in the hall. The prince poured a bottle over the lord's head. They hurried into the hall. The emperor was angry with the prince because of his prank, and Claude frantically wanted to make sure his wife was all right. Claude saw the prince touching his wife. He was upset and furious, since no one dared to touch Ailey except him. Ailey saw her husband and his fierce gaze. She suddenly realized that he wasn't the only one looking at her like that. Ailey turned around and saw a woman, and she immediately realized it was the main character. Ailey thought she was finished. She knew that if you got the prince interested in addition, you could get the prince's jealous girlfriend. Ailey didn't know what to do. Claude approached her, and she was very happy about it. She saw him as the best option after those two. He said he heard about their altercation, and asked her if she was okay. Ailey said she was fine. He asked her if the first prince had done something to her. Ailey said nothing had happened between them. The Duke was puzzled and asked why she was with him then. Ailey looked at him and saw that he and the girl had the same eyes. She couldn't believe it and wondered why he was jealous of her. Ailey said that the prince was just helping her with her problem, but nothing serious. Claude said he didn't have to go and leave her alone. He apologized to her. Claude said the ball would be over soon and suggested she leave. Ailey agreed, and they went. On the way, she thought about the fact that he apologized to her. It wasn't like him at all. She knew he had changed, but she had no idea why. Lying in bed, Ailey thought about what had happened. She didn't understand why everyone had such a reaction. The girl knew that she had to sit quietly and hold out a little longer, and soon she would get a divorce. The butler brought Ailey 3 letters, saying that only one was important. Opening the letters, the girl saw an apology. She thought it was very strange. She asked Henry if he had any idea what all this was for. He said that everyone wanted to get on her side. Henry said that the Duke had pressed her abusers and punished her severely. Ailey said that was too much, and she asked him to burn the letters. A third letter from the princess. Ailey was invited to a tea party at the palace. She didn't want to go after the recent incident. But Henry said that such a thing should not be refused. Ailey knew that the princess in the novella was a very important person. She could be crowned. There are 2 heirs in the empire, and so everyone was divided into 2 camps. Some time ago, the imperial family had 3 heirs. But unfortunately, the prince's brother died under mysterious circumstances, and soon after, the empress died as well, and it was just the 2 of them. Ailey frantically wanted to know what had happened to the young prince. After a little thought, Ailey said to have the butler send a letter with a favorable reply. Ailey went to her husband and apologized for what had happened at the ball. She said that even though they had attacked first, she shouldn't have done that. She had seemed bad to the others. He said she had nothing to apologize for, and she did the right thing, adding that the next time something like that happens, she can pour alcohol on them. Ailey said that the princess invited her to a tea party. Claude said he would go with her. Ailey imagined how it would look, and she felt a little funny. Ailey said that he couldn't go since it would be all ladies there. He said if anyone was rude to her, she could pour tea on them. Ailey was a little puzzled and said he was hot. The Duke said the hotter the better, and asked her to memorize the names of the offenders so he could destroy them. It was the day of the tea party with the princess. Ailey asked the maid if she was dressed too brightly for such an event. The maid said that she was very well dressed in bright clothes, and since she hadn't been to such events for a long time, she needed to draw attention to herself. Ailey arrived at the tea party. Everyone was whispering behind her back, and not only behind her back. She didn't like it at all, and it made her angry. The girls started discussing about her prank. One of the ladies said that even a commoner would not do that to Ailey, adding that she did not even have a proper education since she did not know who was from what family. Ailey decided to find out who this girl was so that she could be properly punished for her rude words, and Ailey decided to teach her a little lesson. Ailey said that she insulted not only her, but also the prince, and such behavior is punishable. Since Ailey and the prince had committed the same behavior, the girl was shocked and started to justify that she did not say that. The princess listened to their dialogue for a bit and politely asked the lady to leave and think about her behavior. All the other girls did not want to fall under the wrath and behaved quietly. The main character of the novella, who was the love of the prince, asked Ailey how her relationship with the Duke was. Ailey didn't want to fight with her and politely told her that she shouldn't show such interest in other couples as it wasn't good. The girl said that couples should get along. She asked her not to be interested in other men. Ailey looked at the girl and realized that she was not at all like she was described in the novel. There, she was shy and very polite to everyone. Ailey thought that in a novella, you don't show everything and reveal the real characters' personalities, and it could be a completely different story. She didn't know what she should do in such a case. One of the ladies said that they all knew that they did not have a good relationship with their husband. Ailey wanted to tell her to watch what she said, but then she heard her husband's voice. Claude was pretty pissed that ladies shouldn't talk about their relationship like that as it upsets him, adding that they have a great relationship. The princess asked what he was doing at the tea party. Claude said he had come to escort his wife. The princess said she didn't know he loved her so much and invited him to sit down. The Duke said they were just leaving. Ailey told her husband that he had been rude and nothing had happened. She was grateful for his help, but she could have figured it out on her own since she was used to being ridiculed. Ailey said they were right that things were not smooth and there was no affection in their relationship. Their conversation was broken by the first prince. The prince was paying attention to Ailey, and her husband didn't like it very much. He asked not to address his wife by her first name. The prince said he would deny his request. The prince was surprised that the Duke was so protective of his wife. The prince said, apologized for being so rude, and asked Ailey if he could call her by her name. Ailey said, emphatically and assertively, no. He said she could resolve it at their other meeting. Ailey yelled at him that she didn't like that either, but he didn't listen to her and left. They were driving home, and Claude said that the prince liked her. Ailey said that it wasn't like that, and she didn't care what he thought of her. She asked her husband what was wrong. He looked at her and said he was very jealous. Ailey was in her room thinking about their trip, thinking about her husband. His eyes seemed so sincere. Her peace was disturbed by a servant girl. The girl asked if she would bring Ailey's lunch to the room. Ailey said she would not mind. The butler came to Ailey and told her that the Duke was calling her to dinner. The young lady was reluctant to go, but she agreed. The maid was very happy that her mistress would dine with the Duke. She said that everything would be fine and that she should not worry. Ailey entered the hall. She was surprised by the beauty and thought she should visit this place repeatedly. Claude invited her to the table. He said that he let everyone go as he wanted to talk to her alone. He apologized for his behavior at the tea party, saying that Ailey was right and he was being rude. He also said he wanted to spend more time with her, to get to know her better as a person. He wanted to get to know her better as an individual and as his wife. Ailey knew that this had already gone too far. Claude said it was important to him that she was no longer afraid of him. Ailey could not afford to sit and listen to him speak. In a rush of emotion, she stood up and said she had to leave. She knew that if she continued to listen to him, he would change her plans. It had been several days since their lunch. Ailey was thinking about her husband. Suddenly he came into the room and brought her breakfast. Ailey was greatly surprised and asked why he had come and not the servant. He said he wanted to see her and brought her breakfast to see how she was eating. Ailey sat down to eat. She saw all her favorite dishes and was puzzled. She wondered how he knew what she liked. She asked if he had eaten. The Duke said he usually skipped breakfast and he would just look at her. Ailey wanted to feed him. He ate obediently, and she thought she was feeding a wild animal that she had just tamed. Ailey said he was doing very well, and now he could eat on his own. Ailey asked him to tell her the real reason he was coming to her. He said that he wanted to be closer to her and begin to get to know her and her preferences, and asked what she was doing today. Ailey hesitated and asked what he wanted. The Duke timidly invited her to the festival. He told her to get ready, and he would pick her up later. She was alone, and thought he had asked her out. She was very pleased, and Ailey even blushed a little. The maid came in to see her and said she heard that the Duke had invited her to the festival. Leon was so excited, and Ailey asked what she was so excited about. Leon said that they were going to a festival, and it was famous for its beauty, and only couples come. And also, if someone gives flowers at the festival, they will be together forever. Leon said that the Lord hadn't left his room in days and was preparing to go out into the world. Ailey knew he had a lot of work to do, and she realized he was trying to get things done faster so he could find time for her, so that they could go out for the holiday in peace. Ailey was collected by the maid. The girl looked fiercely beautiful. Ailey thanked Leon for her work and left. They arrived at the festival. Ailey understood what the maid was talking about. It was a beautiful place. She saw a lot of interesting things and wanted to see more. In a burst of emotion, she grabbed his hand and pulled him towards the stores. He turned very red. She recoiled as she realized she was holding his hand. He said with a smile that if she wanted to hold his hand, she could just tell him. Ailey said she just wanted to pull him towards the stores. Without arguing, she took his hand and they went to look at all the jewelry. He said she could pick out whatever she wanted and he would buy it all. Ailey said she just wanted to look and there was no need to buy. They went for a walk. Claude said he wanted to show her a place. He put his jacket on her and asked her to wait for him for a while. Ailey stood there and smiled. She loved the view. She saw the fireworks and thought she would like to stand with her husband and see his reaction. He came and brought her flowers. The girl was puzzled. She asked if he knew what it meant. He asked her to forget everything and just accept them. Ailey noticed that everyone's mood had changed for the worse after the festival, and her maid, who was always cheerful, was gloomy. Ailey asked what was wrong. Leon said that animals showed up at the festival, and especially they visited the place where her family lives. Ailey reassured the girl. She said they were strong, and the locals couldn't handle them, but only the Duke could. Monsters that grew on evil mana are very strong and tough, and they recover quickly, and they can die after only one strong blow. Ailey sat and thought. She realized how she could help the maid and everyone else. Claude and the butler were discussing the situation. He knew that he would have to go to the place and deal with the monsters himself. Claude gave the butler instructions, and he hurriedly left. Ailey came to him. He was a little surprised. He said that he had to leave for some time and would not have time to fulfill their arrangement. She thought he would ask for more time, but he didn't. But she said she would go with him. He was against her going. But Ailey knew she had to go and arrange for him to meet the blacksmith who would forge a sword for him. Noah was a legendary blacksmith. He went through many hardships, but he still managed to create a weapon that could kill monsters with a single swing. The first to notice its value was the prince. He was looking for evidence of Claude's rebellion, but he escaped. Ailey wanted to find the sword and said she would go with him. The Duke didn't want to take her with him because he was very worried about her. They argued for a long time, but Ailey was persistent. Ailey came to her husband's house in the evening, as they had not agreed. She didn't want to give up, and she didn't want to be unintentionally questioned. She had to go, because not only her life, but also her husband's depended on it. But Claude stood his ground and would not take her with him. He said she should wait at home. He was very worried about her. There were lots of monsters where he was going. She decided not to give up her position and sat beside him while he pretended to sleep. An hour later, he could already hear the silence. When he looked, he saw that she had fallen asleep sitting on the ground. He took her to the bed and sat beside her. She woke up and saw him sitting beside her. She felt very embarrassed. Ailey decided to leave quickly. The Duke said she had won, and he would take her with him. Ailey was very happy that she had won the argument. She said she would not leave the guards one step. After a while, they packed up and moved on their way. Claude assigned 2 knights to accompany her, and ordered them to guard and keep an eye on his wife. They arrived at the place where the beasts attacked. All the people were shocked that the Duchess had come. They also felt joy that she had visited them. Claude said he would go and look at the problem, and she should stay with the knights. The knights suggested she go to the inn, but Ailey said she wanted to go to the blacksmith. One of the knights said he knew a place where all the master blacksmiths gather. They went to find the master. When they arrived at the place, they were met by a blacksmith. He offered them his services and the other craftsmen who made their wares. Ailey said that Noah was the one she wanted. The master of his craft said that he was not very good at his work and suggested that she go to someone else. Ailey was very persistent. She asked to be told exactly where he was. The blacksmith explained the way to it. Ailey found him and told him she had an order for him. She really wanted to get ahead of the prince and get the magic sword. That could kill a beast with a single blow. The blacksmith said he had no idea how to make such a weapon. Ailey said that was fine, and she would tell him how to make it. He asked her once she knew how to make it, why did she come to him? She asked him if he didn't want his weapon and his name to go down in history. He was a little puzzled. Ailey said if he followed her, he would get everything he wanted. Ailey said that he is very capable and will be able to do everything under her guidance. He's also the only one who can do it. The recipe for the magic weapon is very simple needed. Combine a mana crystal and a sword. Crystals are very fragile, even sorcerers often break them. Ailey knew that only Noah could do what was necessary and create the weapon. He had the ability to place a crystal into a sword. By constantly testing himself, he succeeded in creating a magical weapon. After that, he was taken by the prince into his ranks. The sword was very valuable, and that's why Ailey wanted to be the first to get her hands on it. She knew she could rewrite history and get everything that would help her husband win. As they chatted, they reached the result she wanted. She left him with happy thoughts, knowing that she would soon get what she wanted. 3 days later, Noah presented the sword. He was frantic with joy that he had succeeded in making it. Ailey was thrilled. She offered to let him work for her. He accepted. Claude broke up with the monsters with ease. A local knight said that he admired the Duke very much. The Duke said that there are a lot of opponents and they should deal with the monsters as soon as possible. One of the knights who was guarding Ailey came in. He said that Ailey wanted to see him. The Duke came to meet her, and the girl gave him a sword. He was surprised by this gift and fiercely pleased. He liked the sword very much. Ailey told him what kind of sword it was. Claude was shocked and didn't understand how she knew about such things. The girl said that she had read old books and learned about everything. He used it. After he used the magic, he felt something bad, also affected by his injury. He fell down and lost consciousness. Ailey was in shock. Claude woke up and said he had been in such a hurry to see her that he had not transported his wound well. Ailey was very worried about him. She asked for forgiveness. Ailey treated her husband's scratches. He said she had enough work to do. She should get a doctor to take care of him. She said she would take care of him and work on his wounds. And he doesn't need to be embarrassed about his scars and wounds at all. The Duke thanked her again for the gift and said that with her help, he would defeat everyone. Ailey asked him to come to her safe and uninjured. Claude was dealing with monsters and not paying attention to his wife at all. Ailey knew that at this rate her plan would succeed and she would get a divorce, but it was very heavy on her heart. For a complete and quick victory, Ailey decided to make as many weapons as possible with which to kill the monsters. The blacksmiths prepared the swords, and Noah used his power to insert the stones and bring the sword to completion. One of the knights took and used sword and was shocked at the result. They chopped down the monsters and defeated all of them in a few days. One of the knights was very grateful to the Duchess. The Duke supported him. He said it was time for him to leave. He knew there was one day left and the month was ending. He couldn't let her divorce him. The Duke ordered a carriage to be prepared. He wanted to leave. Ailey sat and thought about her and her husband. She knew that the month was ending, and according to their agreement, they would divorce. She knew he would die at the hands of the prince. Ailey knew it wasn't fair. He wasn't like he was in the novella. He was better and sincere. But unfortunately, Ailey couldn't sacrifice her life for him. Claude came to Ailey's house and said he missed her a lot. Ailey asked how he was doing with the monsters. He said that things are going as well as they can thanks to her. Ailey said that the month ends in 2 days. Duke was determined to go all the way and said that he knows and will try until the time runs out. He invited her to go with him to the barrier where the monsters were killed. Ali agreed to go with him and went to pack. They rode in a carriage, and the Duke said the knights had to clean everything before they arrived. He wanted to show her the beautiful landscape, which had been restored thanks to her. Claude said that the knights all missed her very much without her. Ailey was upset about the whole situation that had come up. She felt uncomfortable and very upset. Claude saw the state she was in and said they would be there soon and they would get some fresh air. Ailey and Claude stood on the wall and admired the forest. Claude told his wife that if she stayed with him, he would give all of himself to her. And he gave her a ring. He asked her to accept him no matter what her decision was. He wanted her to remember him. Ailey accepted him. She knew she would remember him all the time. They were disturbed by the arrival of the knights who wanted to thank the girl. They began to speak words of gratitude. The Duke asked them not to push her. The girl said he might not have told them so. The Duke said he only wanted her to look at him. They stood and looked up at the stars. Ailey said she would remember that day for a long time. The next day, the Duke broke the news about the monsters. He asked his wife to wait for him, since he needed to verify the information. Ailey said she wanted to go with him. He was very worried about her, but he knew it was the last day and he wanted to spend every minute with her. He agreed to take her with him. They arrived at the place and went into the cave. Eileen saw the magic trail, and she remembered how the novel talked about such a thing. She couldn't understand how the mage had managed to make so many magic circles in the cave where the monsters were. She realized that they had been made earlier. Claude looked at the circles and said that they were used to summon monsters. Ailey was surprised and asked how he knew that. He wasn't a mage after all. Claude said that he had fought alongside mages, and they used similar circles to summon their pets to fight monsters. Ailey was surprised that he could remember such a thing. He was angry and wanted those responsible to be punished immediately for their actions. The Duke wanted to send a mage to check the circles and said that he should check all the mages who lived in the neighborhood. Ailey was confused as to how this could happen, since there was no such thing in the novel. While walking to the carriage, Ailey was attacked by a monster. Claude protected her with his body, and a couple minutes later, he killed the monster. He knew his wife was unharmed, and that was enough for him. Ailey looked at him in tears. He was hurt and fell down. Claude told his wife that he was fine and she could go rest. Ailey thanked him for saving her and told him that their time was up. Ailey knew she couldn't leave him after he saved her. She said that she had made up her mind and she would stay with him. She knew she had to save Claude's life and her own at any cost. Ailey knew how they would die, and that was her advantage. She decided to hold off on the divorce and focus on saving herself. He went up to her and told her that he was very grateful to her and would try to do his best to keep her with him and not change her mind. The next day, a priestess arrived to heal the Duke's wounds. Priestesses worship the goddess of peace. With their power, they can cast out demons as well as heal wounds. The priestess began to heal, and in the blink of an eye, it was as if nothing had happened. Ailey was shocked and overjoyed. She thanked the priestess. The priestess accepted her thanks with all modesty. The priestess and Ailey went out into the corridor and began to talk. The priestess asked to test Ailey's energy. She hesitated but agreed. After checking, the priestess said that she initially felt the presence of divine energy, but when she checked, she realized she was wrong. Ailey was glad that no one had bought it out. She decided to hurry to her husband. As she entered, she saw him getting dressed. She asked embarrassedly if she should come back later, but he said he was already finished so she could come in. Ailey said she wanted to talk about the future and especially about the blacksmith. The Duke was a little puzzled. She asked him in all seriousness to listen to her. Ailey said she wanted to get into sword making. She wanted to take the stones separately and select them to be of the best quality. She also wanted to start fulfilling her duties as mistress of the house. The Duke said she was free to do what she wanted. Claude asked how important Noah was to her, and in what place of importance he is to her. Ailey was puzzled by this question, but knew she had to answer. She said he's in third place because he's a genius that doesn't exist in the Empire anymore. Claude asked what place he was in. Ailey said second. The Duke asked who was number 1. Ailey said she was, but he interrupted her, saying he had a case and needed to leave. He didn't want to hear who was in first place. He said he would do anything to keep her from wishing her decision away. They arrived at the castle. Ailey got some personal bodyguards. Henry met them. He was glad to see them back. The Duke told his wife to go rest. She in turn said he could use a rest too. When Ailey entered the room, she saw the maid. She was very happy to see her back. She tearfully thanked her for what she had done. Ailey knew she had to prevent her husband's death, but she didn't see how she could do it. After all, everything was going differently than in the novel, and she was very alarmed by it. She wondered why Claude had decided to stand up against the imperial family, since he had no apparent reason. Ailey knew she had only 5 months left before he would be killed for cheating. So she wanted to find out why. Ailey told Henry that she wanted to start doing business. He was very pleased and said he would explain everything to her. The Duchess sat and pored over the documents. When she had been with Henry, she had understood everything, but when she was on her own, it had become very difficult. Sometimes she wanted to give up. Ailey received a letter from Noah. He thanked her for the opportunity she had given him. He said he would be sure to pay for her kindness and make the best sword possible. Ailey was distracted by Rosen's paperwork. He said she was working so hard that she didn't even have time to talk. Ailey said the same thing, her husband told her. She asked if he knew where the Duke was. He said he was at the knight's training ground. Ailey said it was okay to visit him. Claude was surprised to see his wife. She thanked him for providing a new smithy for Noah. Ailey let the bodyguard go, and they went for a walk. She asked him if there was any information regarding the circles. He said the investigation was inconclusive. He added that she didn't have to worry. She would be fine because he was there for her. Duke also said there will be a lot of talk about it at the founding banquet. Ailey wanted to look amazing on the can. She wanted to outshine everyone. He could accomplish this with Princess Shay's diamond necklace. They went to a workshop and asked them to make a necklace from a stone. The master was very happy to be honored. She said she would do it in time. Claude suggested she look at some more jewelry. Ailey said she had enough of what she had, but he was persistent. They were offered to buy some stones, and especially one that matched her hair color very well. When Ailey saw the price, she was a little stunned. A young lady entered the store. It was the prince and his girlfriend. They all greeted each other politely. Edith said she was very glad to see them. The prince said he let her be the one to call him by his name. Ailey said she didn't remember agreeing with what he said. The prince said he has heard of her exploits. He said she is unique and fun. The Duke started to say a phrase, but when Ailey heard that he wanted to be her, she quickly covered his mouth with her palms. The prince laughed and said that they seemed to have a good relationship. Edith stood beside him. He looked at her and said that he had forgotten all about her. Ailey was confused as to how he could say such a thing. She knew there was something between them, and he was letting himself talk to her like that. She stood there and stared, thinking they had had a fight. The Duke looked and said he would get jealous if she looked so intently at other men, and said he wished she would only look at him that way. She agreed with him. The Duke said to have all the purchases sent to them at the castle. They said goodbye and left. They rode to the castle, and Claude asked if she was interested in the prince. The girl said she was not, and asked why he thought so. He said the one was very handsome. Ailey said he was not her type, and he had a sweetheart. Besides, she said she didn't know a more handsome man than him. When she said that, she was taken aback. He looked at her with miscommunication, and Ailey said he shouldn't speculate. Ailey decided to change the subject and asked him why he disliked him so much. He said he didn't like him because he was interested in his wife. Ailey asked if he liked the fact that he would be the next emperor. Claude said that was a dangerous question. But if she's around, everything will be fine. He said he's sticking to neutrality, and he doesn't care who the next emperor is. The Duke said such topics were dangerous, but he would still tell her. He thought the prince was behaving promiscuously after his brother's death. Claude said that at the age of 14, he died because of an accident. He had high hopes, as he was very talented and a copy of his mother, so she loved him more. There was a national festival for the founding of the country. After the banquet, the young man left the palace with his bodyguards to watch the festival. The weather that day was northern weather. It was raining very hard. On the way back, they passed by a river. Because of the wet road, tragedy struck. Ailey said that it could be understood why the prince changed. The Duke said it could be one of the reasons. But when they found the prince's body, they found stab wounds on it. The family investigated the death, but nothing was found. The empress, who was in charge of the investigation, soon passed away. There were rumors that she had been poisoned. In the end, the emperor could not find out anything and decided to close the case. And after the incident, the prince changed. Claude said that despite all his behavior, he did not like that he was trying to get close to his wife. Lying in bed, Ailey kept thinking about her husband's words and his death. She decided to put all thoughts aside and sleep. She had a terrible dream. Specifically, the prelude to the novel's finale. The scene in which the Duke was preparing a rebellion on the imperial family. Ailey was terrified. She tried to reach out to him and stop him, but it was just a dream, and she failed. She didn't understand why he was up to all this. They would have wanted to, headed for the castle, but one of the knights said that the prince had found out and was on his way to them. The prince asked why he was doing all this. The Duke said that he knew everything himself. The prince asked him if he didn't feel sorry for his wife, because she was going to die too. The Duke was furious and said he dared not speak of her. The prince attacked him. They did not have a complete fight. Using a magic sword, the prince killed the Duke. As he was dying, Claude told him not to lose Ailey as she had nothing to do with it. The prince left, saying it was out of his power to keep her alive. Ailey was furious. She ran to her husband. She cried frantically, and a spirit came to her. The woman asked Ailey if she could prevent her husband's death. Ailey cried out that she would do anything to keep him safe. Waking up, she was confused by such a dream. Ailey knew that some of the dialogue was not in the novel. She wanted to check on her husband and make sure he was all right. Ailey came to see her husband. He said she was too pale and asked if she was okay. Ailey said she was healthy and everything was fine and asked how he was feeling. Claude said he was healthy as an ox. She saw the letter and asked who it was from. Claude said that the temple had sent a thank you note for their donations and invited them to visit. Ailey kept thinking about the woman in the dream and asked her husband to visit the temple with her. He said they would go after the meal. Ailey asked if he would eat with her. He wanted to refuse, but Ailey insisted, saying it was her responsibility to take care of her husband and his health, and he missed meals too often. They were eating. Claude wanted to know the real reason why Ailey had come to him in the morning. Ailey didn't want to say, but under his pressure, she told him she'd had a nightmare. Claude supported her and told her that it was only a dream, and he was there for her no matter what. They arrived at the temple. They were welcomed very warmly. Ailey asked the priestess to send a priestess to help them and heal Claude. When the priestess came to them, Ailey thanked her again, and they went to look around the temple. Ailey asked why everyone in the temple had white hair. The priestess told her that the more faith they had in the goddess, the lighter their hair became. Since it was her color, they came to the altar, where an exquisite bracelet was on it. Ailey asked what kind of bracelet it was. She frantically wanted to possess it. The priestess said it was the bracelet of the goddess herself. Ailey asked why then he was holding it so easily. The girl said that it was a prophecy waiting to happen and could not be taken away. It had magic on it, and it would take a lot of effort to get it out of the temple. The priestess also said that according to the prophecy, it must be kept in this place, because in time, a man would come who could possess it and bring peace. As the priestess spoke, Ailey moved closer and closer to him. She wanted him fiercely. She heard a voice from her dream and was startled. She touched the display case and it shattered and the bracelet was on her arm. The servants of the temple came running to the noise. They were outraged at the behavior of the guests. They began to hurl accusations and a heated argument broke out. Ailey calmed everyone down and asked them to listen to her. They agreed. Ailey told them what had happened from the beginning. The priestess confirmed her story. D'après. The attendants were shocked. Ailey said she would take off the bracelet. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't get it off. She asked her husband, but he couldn't do it either. So the girl went to the attendant. All attempts failed. One of the attendants said there was no way to remove the bracelet, and they offered to cut her wrist off. Claude heard and said he would kill anyone who hurt her. The priestess said it was because of the prophecy. The novices were a little taken aback. After all, according to them, there was no chaos. So there was no need for peace either. The priestess said that there were monsters attacking now, and a lot of not-so-good people. Ailey was surprised that she had taken her side. The men asked Ailey to show the power of the artifact. Ailey failed, and said she didn't want to wear it and asked them to take it off. But the man said they didn't know how to take it off themselves. The Duke was angry. He was frantically yelling for them to take it off or figure out how to take it off. The man said they would figure something out. In the meantime, a priestess would be introduced to Ailey temporarily. They walked to the carriage and talked. The priestess said that they would close the prayer room for a while until they could prepare the crafting of the bracelet. Later, everything would be restored, and somehow, nothing would be noticed. Claude calmed his wife down, saying a lot of nice things, and left, leaving the two of them alone. The women spoke. The priestess said she had followed Ailey because she believed her to be the true owner of the bracelet and believed in the prophecy. When they arrived at the castle, Ailey told Henry that the priestess had come to light the castle. She would need a room while the ritual took place. The butler escorted the girl to her new quarters. Claude was worried that at the banquet someone might realize it was a real religion. Ailey put him at ease by saying that by then they would have taken it off, and if not, she would say it was an imitation. She apologized to him for adding to his troubles. He said she had nothing to apologize for. She hadn't done anything. He touched her gently. Ailey suddenly got teary-eyed. She wanted to be with him. His touch felt good to her, but she said she had to leave. Ailey was about to go to bed when her husband came to her. Claude said he wanted to put her to bed. Since she had been having nightmares, he wanted her to have a good night's sleep. Ailey lay down. He sat down next to her. Claude told her not to worry about anything. He would protect her. She knew she'd heard those words somewhere, and it made her uncomfortable. She asked Claude to stay with her until she fell asleep. She looked at her husband and said that she felt uncomfortable with him sitting and watching, so she asked him to lie down with her. They lay down, and she asked him to take her hand. Ailey woke up and saw that Claude was gone. Ailey asked Henry to take care of breakfast for the priestess. The mistress went to the priestess. They were sitting nicely and talking about what had happened. Ailey wondered when the bracelet would be removed, and she wanted to know if the priests would be attending the banquet. The priestess said they would be there, and she would go with them and keep an eye on her from afar. The day of the banquet was approaching. The maids were running around their mistress in joy. Ailey looked at them and thought they enjoyed the gathering more than she did. Ailey had her necklace sent to her. When they saw it, they were stunned by its beauty. Ailey said you should pay the master double for such beauty. The day of the banquet came. Ailey was all packed, and the maids couldn't take their eyes off her. As she slipped the ring on her finger, Ailey remembered her husband's words. They made her heart ache, and she wanted to be with him. Claude met his wife and said she looked simply dazzling. The girl said he looked dainty. He noticed that she was wearing a ring. Claude said it suits her very well and kissed her hand. She was a little embarrassed. They hurried to the banquet. When they arrived at the banquet, they saw that the palace shone with luxury. They were introduced and went among the guests. Everyone was frantically discussing their family life, the necklace that had the most precious stone in it, and the bracelet that didn't match the outfit. Ailey's father, who was attending the event. Ailey was indifferent to their conversations until she heard that her father had arrived. She knew nothing about him. He had been mentioned casually in the novel, and she didn't know how to behave around him. Ailey couldn't stop thinking about her father. She was putting all the facts together. Her musings faded away when they greeted the imperial family. The emperor said a beautiful speech and wished them a good rest. They stood looking at the people around them. Suddenly, their father flew to Ayla and started to scandalize her. Claude stood up for her. Her father was angry, and he wanted to talk to her. Ailey said if he wanted to talk, they could do it on the highway, and asked her husband to wait for her. He said he would walk her to the track and wait for her. The father asked why his daughter was not following the emperor's order. Ailey was puzzled. She wanted to find out a little more about everything. She said the Duke was her family, and if her father offered her anything more, she would consider it. He only asked her to give him information about the Duke. Her father left, leaving Ailey alone. Her husband came up to her and asked if she was well. He asked what the Count wanted. The girl said that now was not the place to talk, and she would tell everything in a more convenient place. The Duke said that if the wife was uncomfortable, they could go home. Ailey said it was fine, and they could stay. They went into the hall. The prince came up to them. They talked for a while, and the Duke said they had to leave. As they were leaving, the prince noticed a bracelet on her hand. He said he had seen it in the prayer room and asked to see it. The Duchess was a little nervous, but approaching the prince, she showed him the bracelet and told him that it was just a fake relic. Since she had recently visited the temple, she liked the goddess's bracelet very much. The prince liked the bracelet very much and said that indeed that one looked like a relic. Their innocent actions were seen by the prince's lover. She quickly ran away. The Duchess told the prince to immediately follow her and correct the situation by saying that there had been a misunderstanding. The Duke and Duchess decided to go to the girl and explain the situation to her. Ailey saw the prince talking to his beloved, but to her regret, she was far away and could not hear their conversation. Suddenly, a servant came upon them. Claude reprimanded him and told him that he should be more careful from now on. The Duchess didn't want to make too much fuss and complicate things and said it was fine. She remembered the young servant and told him to return to his duties. She saw the bracelet on her wrist glow. Ailey decided to approach the girl and tell her that she had misunderstood the whole situation. As she suddenly saw a servant boy attacking them, she realized it was the dark sorcerer. Claude covered her with his body to keep her out of danger. The girl didn't want anyone to get hurt and accidentally use her magic. She managed to use the relic to repel the black sorcerer's attack. He was furious. She didn't know what she was doing, but she knew she had to do whatever it took to protect her husband and everyone at the banquet. He didn't understand how she had divine powers. Ailey had weakened him so much that she could arrest him. Everyone present was in a state of confusion at what had happened. They were all whispering and discussing the young Duchess and what she was able to do, and the fact that she had saved the prince. The temple priestess said they would do anything to support the girl and be faithful to her. She promised her she would be faithful. To all the commotion, the emperor came running. He was told what happened, and he used his power against the dark mage, thus revealing his true colors. The mage crushed the poison capsule and died. The emperor was furious about what had happened at his banquet. He gave everyone instructions as to what they should do and asked everyone to leave the banquet as it was closed. The emperor thanked the girl for saving his son. Later, the prince approached her. He also thanked her for saving him and Edith. He was surprised and very grateful for her bravery. The Duchess was approached by the priests. They asked her to come to the temple later to talk to the goddess. Ailey knew she had to visit the temple to learn more about the bracelet, how to remove it, and her power. Ailey knew that today's incident was not in the novel, and she was frantic to find out why that was the case. She didn't understand why she was a minor character, suddenly the mistress of relics, and why she had been granted such power. The priestess told her not to worry about anything. They would try to help her. She also said that the temple would soon declare her mistress of the sacred relic. Ailey was a little shocked by this, as she would not be left alone after such actions. The Duke said that they had already prepared the carriage and they could go home. Ailey was very glad that they would leave this place. He asked her if she was able to walk and told her if she was heavy, he could carry her in his arms. The girl was embarrassed by this suggestion, as she didn't want everyone watching. Ailey said she could walk on her own, and she was fine. Then he suggested that she take his hand. They walked slowly to the carriage. Duchess said she was fine, and asked how he was after such a shock. Claude said he was used to this sort of thing, as he had been subjected to many attempts on his life. But really, he was scared for her. He was worried about her, since he couldn't do much about it. Ailey came to be horrified that he had outlived his time, that he had suffered a lot of horror and was used to being attacked. To diffuse the situation, Ailey said that he didn't have to worry. She was there for him now, and she would protect him. The girl asked her husband if she was the real owner of the relic, if it could favor their life. He said she had nothing to worry about, and he would take care of all matters, but also thanked her for saving it, saying it was an unusual experience to be rescued. The gorgeous young lady walked leisurely toward her destination. The maid stood in a row and gave her a silent stare. As she passed the women, the young lady wished them good morning. When the girl passed them, the maids began to discuss her. They sincerely did not understand how she could have changed in just one night. The maids knew that the girl was shy and modest, but tonight they saw a completely different person. It shocked them. The young mistress came to her husband. She was anxious but assertive and did not want to stop. The girl offered her husband a divorce. The young master was shocked by what she said. He didn't understand why she would suddenly make such a statement. Dumbfounded, he only managed to interrogate her about what she said. But the girl was not going to back down. The girl calmly repeated her praise to him, and said that there was not, and never had been love and warmth in their marriage, so that she saw no point in living together. The young lady said she didn't want anything, she only wanted to leave. He remained silent. The lady never heard an answer, said his silence meant agreement, and decided to leave. Claude was furious. He grabbed Mrs. Ayla's hand, pulled her close to him, and told her that he had no intention of divorcing her. Claude was insistent. He said he would not let her go under any pretext. Even in death, he wouldn't let her go. He didn't want to lose her like that. Ayla left him for her room. She was very excited and confused. Ayla didn't understand what she should do next. She wondered why he was so adamant about the divorce and didn't know the answer. Just a week ago, the young lady was an ordinary girl, a college student. She and her friends were celebrating the end of the semester. They were having fun, because next they were waiting for something completely different, namely adulthood. But, unfortunately, the girl got very drunk and carelessly stumbled. Such a prank cost her her life. But fortunately, or unfortunately, the girl was given a second chance. She was reborn into the body of a young mistress. It was just a minor character in the romantic fantasy, The Prince, My Prince, who was doomed to a tragic death because of her husband's infidelities. The daughter of a viscount, Ayla was forced to marry Duke Claude Reinhardt to pay off her father's debt. And the reason Claude agreed was very simple. The girl was quiet and never argued with him. He just wanted a wife from a weak family. Claude paid the debt, but he left her. He didn't see her as a wife. Even on their first anniversary, the girl was alone. He avoided her in everything. After the wedding, he left her, and she spent their wedding night crying alone. Claude was an extremely heartless man. Under the guise of fighting monsters, he gathered people to organize a rebellion. However, the rebellion was put down. Claude tried to lead a group into the palace, but the first prince, the main character of the novel, noticed in time. The prince decided to strike back and execute the entire family. Because of the rebellion, Ayla was captured and beheaded. She was never mentioned again in the book. Unfortunately, the girl was caught in the heroine's body. She was confused as to why she had to die because of her husband. The girl knew she had to leave him before everything was accomplished. The girl sat in thought as she was suddenly interrupted by a woman's voice. The woman at the door said she was about to enter. The girl was a little puzzled. She knew that maids aren't supposed to do that. They work and behave differently.